People are the most important things. Relationships with the team, having the right people and the right jobs who have the right skill set for the phase of the company and its end and that it has to go through. Getting that right is the difference between it working and not.
Today, we're excited to welcome Rob Bearden, co-founder and CEO of Sema4.ai. Rob has spent over 20 years at the forefront of enterprise software, co-founding Hortonworks, leading Docker, and steering Cloudera through its $5.3 billion sale. He also held leadership roles at SpringSource and JBoss, both acquired by tech giants. Now, at Sema4.ai, Rob is helping enterprises build and manage AI agents that transform mission-critical work. Known for scaling startups into billion-dollar companies, Rob also emphasizes people, integrity, and lessons from his faith as key drivers of success. In this episode, Rob shares lessons from scaling startups to billion-dollar exits, how AI is compressing company-building cycles from years into months, the rise of agent-based systems, and why today's AI shift could transform industries and even global GDP.
Do you see that we're going to get to a place where we will have agents for practically everything?
The short answer is yes. I think there'll be applicable agents for everything from personal relationships and calendar scheduling to making reservations to certainly even buying cars. When we look at work today, we're going to see agents have the ability to do vast majority of what our knowledge workers do today.
Rob, you've built through multiple tech shifts. What makes building a company in this AI shift and this AI evolution that we're in any different?
Yeah. Well, it's a very different cycle that we're in now versus the internet or mobile, and what that led to was SaaS applications. But there's also the pattern recognition, the things that are the same. The thing that's the same, we're here to solve a problem. How we do it, the way we do it, the kind of skills that we do it with, and the clock speed that we have to go do it, extraordinarily different. And so how we define the problem, how we go build the tech, how we engage with the customer, how we actually build the tech, very, very different. In the SaaS model, it starts with, again, what's the problem? But then it's very much a waterfall sequential problem set where the problem's defined, and then you have an engineering team define the product build cycle. You go then have a release cycle, and then you give that to a customer in a test mode and ultimately roll it out to production. And those tend to be 6, 8, 10-month cycles. To where with AI, you clearly have an understanding of the problem you want to go solve, the value of that problem. But then you go understand the capability of the enabling LLMs. And you start with what is the automation that we can bring through LLMs and reasoning models, and then you engage the tech in a high iteration mode, and you're literally looking at week-long cycles to deliver tech into the customer, let them experiment with how that gives them the solution to their problem, how accurate was the outcome, and within a matter of weeks, you have a highly functional environment that's driving unparalleled automation at massive degrees of accuracy over what humans had. And so if you just look at the cycles, what would have taken a year, 9 months to a year in the previous build models that we did, this is happening in multiple weeks, less than 90-day cycles. And you're getting a much better outcome that's much more accurate and a much higher value unlock to the customer's world that lets them transform their business model, their operating model, their customer engagement model, their supply chain models. So the value construction is much, much more rapid here.
That's interesting. I think there's a few points there that I want to double click on. One, you said the speed. As far as the speed is concerned, there is this urgency right now in the market to get to market very quickly. There's a war for customers, as always. There's a war for talent. What makes the current climate with AI, and I know obviously the technology is profound. I mean, what you could do now with AI is very different to what was available 2 years ago or 5 years ago. But what makes the speed that we're operating right now somewhat and competition's there, but the level of competition in the market is just beyond anything we've seen before. What's the reality right now in the market? Are we looking at the possibility that in the space of 3 months, 6 months, you might have a product that maybe might have taken 3-4 years to deliver in the past?
There's a few things you have to bifurcate in that. First of which is we have technology that does astounding things. To some degree, though, we have the have and the have-nots with what the technology can do and how it's applied. And what I mean by the have and the have-nots, the how it's applied and are those problems solved rapidly and accurately in a way that creates quick value unlock for a customer that can be adopted, put in production, and gain value? Or is it clever tooling that is still looking for an applicable use case that can unlock value and go to production? And there's this big dichotomy right now between all of these powerful, capable tooling and AI products and how they're applied into the enterprise in a way that the enterprise can use them in a production-ready value unlock and value creation that returns automation back, that they can apply back to their customers, their product, their supply chain, versus just seeing applied technology run in their environment and maybe do something interesting. The example of that is generative AI. It's very applicable. It provides great automation and efficiency around document creation. But how that is applied from an enterprise process standpoint is very different in value creation and unlock for supply chains or customer engagements. But then you see companies like Cursor who have applied the AI tooling for engineering world and what they've been able to accomplish in terms of engineering efficiency, accuracy of those applications, and the value unlock that's created in time to value. You look at Harvey and what they've been able to do in the legal application of AI and the due diligence process, the document review process, the document construction process. And so it's about how is enabling technology applied in a way that creates true production unlock, and that's where you see the divide between the have and the have-nots.
Right. As far as like creating value, because fundamentally for the customers to really see that value, you've got to deliver a product that's worthy. And in today's AI world, what does it even mean to create value for a customer?
Beauty's in the eye of the beholder, of course, but it's how they can do things in a much more accurate and efficient way than they could with either a human process or a very constrained SaaS application that they did. And so how do we do things that don't require a human decision, may not even require a human interaction, or it compresses time? It takes what used to be days, weeks, months into hours or days. And more importantly, it gives a more predictable, accurate outcome. And when you can continue to evolve and iterate on that to higher and better outcomes, more consistent and predictable accuracy rates, those sorts of things. And so I think that is what shows value behind AI, and that we can do things better, faster, more efficient, more accurate than we could and with either humans or existing SaaS applications.
Yeah, so we're talking about speed, we're talking about accuracy, efficiency. It's as if we're working towards building something that delivers that speed and efficiency, but to build the company itself and build the product, you need to be as fast because the competition is quite fierce. You built some incredible companies, and I'd like to go a little bit into the background of yourself. You've founded companies before, you've taken companies public, you've been in the startup game for a while. Is there an element of this feels very different to what it was before? Not just the technology, but just, and I know I'm emphasizing here on the speed, but if you went on vacation for 2 weeks nowadays, you come back, the market has changed. It changes so quick.
Right.
Was it like that before when you were building Hortonworks, Cloudera, and the market today is different? But it's fundamentally that element of need to work really fast. How different really is that?
You have to work at these new paces and speeds of innovation and delivery, or be disintermediated and dismissed in wholesale. And so what you may have had in previous cycles, which, by the way, may have only been 2-3 years ago, where you may have been able to have a year-long or an 18-month-long dev and the ability to get to product market fit, you've got to be able to do that in 45, 90-day cycles. And that is literally the compression of time. And I think more importantly than that, you've got to be able to show transformational outcomes in the delivery of the tech that you're providing versus the existing method that it was being done, whether that's analytics, whether that's a SaaS application, whether that's a dev op tool. You've got to be able to show step function change and be what is viewed in the enterprise as a force multiplier, because the standard and bar is so different now of the expectation, and rightfully so, by the way, of what AI generally can do and the value unlock it should create. And so if you're not meeting that standard as an individual company with your application of AI through your product, then you're going to be summarily dismissed and or disintermediated by the next group that's coming at you right behind it. And that's where we live. And you know what? That's great. That's great for the industry. That's most importantly great for the customer, the enterprise. And when we do all this correctly, as the product community, we're going to get better outcomes. We're going to get more valuable companies. We're going to get ultimately better GDP in our country and a global economy because of what we will enable our customers to do and be and become.
It's almost, as you said, it's almost unlocking a 3, 4, 5x GDP for even the country itself.
It's on a global basis. We should be able to significantly increase GDP over the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years, and just create a completely different way in which products are built, whether that's a robotic product, whether that's a ship, whether that's a piece of software, or a manufacturing generated process. We should be able to impact every bit of that with a higher, better, more accurate outcome.
I want to come back to this, but before we do, I want to go back and look at Hortonworks and compare it with where you are today, because I think it'd be a very good case study to look at. Would it take to get to a reasonable level of product market fit with Hortonworks, and what is it taking now in terms of the speed and the depth of the technology?
Yeah. Good question. So I was very fortunate at Hortonworks to have just a tremendous team, tremendous co-founders, a great product team, product co-founders, go-to-market team. And and the customer base was ready for transformation of how they brought data under management and the insights they got from it. And the Hadoop platform was able to unlock that value very quickly. But again, those were 9, 12, 18-month release cycles. And in today's world, we have to do this in 30, 45, 90-day cycles. Hortonworks, on comparison, at the time, was the fastest software company to reach $100 million of ARR at the time. Today, there's AI companies. Unfortunately, Sema4 is not one of them, but there are AI companies who are reaching $80, $90, $100 million inside their first year of operations.
Mm-hmm. With probably a smaller team.
With an exponentially smaller team, with probably a quarter to a third of the team.
So let's go back. How big was Hortonworks as far as the company overall, everyone from the engineering, marketing, sales to get to that 100 million? And the second part to that question is, how long did it take to get to that number?
So it took us right at I think it was 25 or 6 months, maybe 27 months to get to that number.
Which is incredible.
And several hundred people in the company to get there.
Wow.
And again, at the time, it was the fastest software company to $100 million. Today, we're seeing AI companies do that in a year with, under 50 people, right? And that's the comparison. Now, and I think we'll only see that velocity increase in today's new world.
When you look at the technical depth of the product, like how because you mentioned Cursor earlier on, you have a smaller team, you have all these AI co-assistant products out there to help the team code quicker, quality check their code as well, less technical debt, less bugs. So there's a sense of, I guess, not only urgency, but an expectation that you're going to be able to get to that number quicker because of what's available, the tools that are available to the engineering team. But if you go back to Hortonworks and you think about that 25, 26 months, the size of the business, the size of engineering, the revenue, I mean, what year were we talking about here?
And we started the company in July of 2011, took the company public in December of 14.
Okay, so 2 years. I mean, looking back, that's fast. That's really, really fast.
Back in the day,
yeah.
Today it's irrelative. Yeah.
You went on. You took the company public.
We did,
and we'll touch on the Cloudera piece later on because I really do want to kind of connect the dots there between Hortonworks and Cloudera. But today, where you are, let's talk about the company. For our audience, what does the company do? What's the problem you're looking to solve? How long have you been around?
Yeah, so Sema4's, we started the company February of 24. So we're a little over 18 months. And the mission for the company is we're a platform for the enterprise and ISVs to build their purpose-built agents. And we manage the life cycle of that. We help them build those agents, deploy those agents, manage those agents through the life cycle of that are purpose-built. So if I'm an enterprise and I want to build a specific agent for a particular line of business, my line of business owner versus my dev team will simply, through natural language, describe the work and the outcome that they want to deliver and enable. Our AI builds that agent. It understands how to connect to the data and applications to be able that will require that agent to have the proper reasoning path to execute at a highly accurate outcome. And then we have the infrastructure to deploy and manage all of everything from the security, the governance, the lineage that's associated with tracking and auditing the execution paths of those agents, because our customers tend to be doing very mission-critical, high-value kinds of use cases with the agents they build and deploy on our platform.
And how big is the company today?
We're not where I want us to be on ARR, but we're growing steadily. Today, we're only about 50 people, so I would say we're very efficient in terms of use of capital and percentage of spend versus our ARR and its growth. So we're on the path that I want to be. Always wanted to go faster, a lot faster, and we're bringing customers on at a pace that we're excited about. Want it to go faster, but what we're really now seeing is really nice inflection points. Most of our customers fit the model of early adopters, but they're major Fortune 2, 3, 400 companies. And we were helping solve their initial AI-driven use case. They saw the value unlock, and now they've had a realization. If we can leverage agents to do this and that use case, we can do these other 10. And we can leverage the Sema4 platform to be our standard platform of how we build and deploy and manage all of our agents across our entire enterprise. And so after we get those first, 2, 3, 4 use cases to production, it starts really accelerating across an enterprise the number of use cases they can enable, they can put in production, and it builds on a compounding basis very quickly.
Right. Agents. So, and tell me if I'm right or wrong here. Let's think about if I was the CEO of a company and we're 300-400 people large. We have a database, a CRM, and I need to build some sort of agent to be able to communicate to the CRM in a way that allows me to, going back to our point earlier on, efficiency, speed, getting more accurate data, run a sales cycle for me by gathering the data, do the little small tasks that may take me a few extra minutes or seconds to do. I don't need to do that in-house. I can come to you and you can build that for me.
That is a particular category of agents that we commonly will go do. Absolutely. I think one of the other categories as well is knowledge work. And so that same CEO has probably multi-thousands of employees that are trained to do a job a particular way with a particular function. And it's a process that is trained. And that human is trained how to do the standard work, but they also have to apply, in many cases, reasoning, and that they may have to look at another application or another data set. Our agents are, and that's knowledge work. And I think we've moved our ability of our agents to actually be able to form at much higher levels of accuracy and outcomes than humans in doing knowledge work. And that's the power of the unlock in AI that we bring through our agents to execute on knowledge work at a much higher consistency and accuracy of outcome than in many repetitive task kinds of roles that humans are playing today. Great examples of that tend to be concentrated in the back office of the CFO. So anything from tax compliance to how we do our quarterly filings, how we do the analysis of the analysis of our financials and unit economic metrics on the analytics side. So there's a lot of different concentrations of back office CFO functions that our agents are now engaged with in our customers' world. On the other side of the trade, when you look at the ability to apply AI across data, and first generation of data analytics was just bring data under management, have SQL query, get insight. Then we applied machine learning to that, and that evolved into predictive analytics. Now today, what the Sema4 agents have the ability to do is to be able to marry the data and insights to the data with truly executing on actions to drive the outcome of best practices that you're trying to get to as part of looking at that data and getting the insight. So we've bridged now the gap between predictive analytics and execution against the actions that predictive analytics says to take, and automating that through higher and higher accuracies in our reasoning models. So, the notion of value unlock exponentially is applied with agents on data.
It's obvious that you're backing this world of agents, and I'm hearing it everywhere. Do you see that we're going to get to a place where we will have agents for practically everything in business and maybe even in our personal lives?
The short answer is yes. I think there'll be applicable agents for everything from how we engage with personal relationships and calendar scheduling to making reservations to certainly even buying cars and ultimately houses and making our daily purchases. I think when we look at work today and how work is done, we're going to see agents have the ability to do vast majority of what our knowledge workers do today. Now, I think that's going to free humans up to do new and more exciting things that are of higher value and more creativity, and actually drive accelerated innovation for how products are built, supply chains are innovated, customers are engaged with, automation models happen. But there will be agents to do knowledge work, and I think more importantly, how agents can manage data to understand how to make very accurate, best in practice outcomes happen automatically. And I think that's going to be the real force multiplier value unlock that AI generally and through agents happens. And you're seeing the early stages of that applied now. And you're going to see that, every 6 months become exponentially enabled through core platforms like ours.
Can we trust agents?
You have to be able to trust the models that agents execute on. Okay, left to their own. The analogy there would be: can you trust a SaaS application to run your business? Can you trust the insight to the analytic to make a very critical path, mission critical decision? The answer to both those questions is, of course you can. If they're structured correctly, if they're configured correctly, if they're engaged with correctly, whether it be data or application. Same's very true with agents. But what we have the ability to get the value unlocked from agents is we can bring reasoning models together in a much more efficient way than how data was brought under management and insights were reached through these big DWs, or how SaaS applications had to be programmatically configured in a very procedural, sequential world, to where now we can just automate reasoning models that agents execute against. And these reasoning models can be constructed in minute percentage of time that it takes to build and manage large volumes of data under management or very complex SaaS application configurations that are very procedurally driven. And so you'll see that agents will transform everything about how, and quite frankly, I think, disintermediate ultimately what SaaS applications do, and they will significantly augment and accelerate value creation from large volumes of data under management. It'll allow those big data sets to actually execute outcomes and actions automatically through agents versus the inference that a human will have to make from judgment calls they get from an insight of data.
I think, I'll give you an example, right? Like if you were to try to call ambulance services, emergency services, or if you had to call your doctor and book an appointment, and you have to wait in a long line waiting for somebody to answer the phone, and they may capture your information incorrect. You might go through this entire process of explaining what's wrong. That, in my opinion, that needs to get automated, that entire process
For sure.
through agents. I think the speed, I'm assuming with an agent, you'll have an answer and somebody on the other side of the phone immediately. You don't have to wait 30 minutes, 45 minutes. I think there's nothing more frustrating than calling a company or a service provider and having to be on the phone for such a long time until somebody answers the phone. So I feel like there's so many current tasks happening right now in our day-to-day life and in business as well that AI and with agents we could completely replace. But then it begs another question. It opens up a completely different question for the market. And I hear this a lot. Where do we, professionally speaking, whether you're software engineers or whatever you actually do for a living, when we talk about being more creative and sparing up all that time to think of new things to do, is there going to be much left for us to do?
Of course. This is a very applicable discussion thread, right? Because when we looked at cloud, it's something as simple as, as the cloud came, we said, wow, if I'm a data center operator in today's world and I'm operating a client server environment or an on-prem environment, the cloud is going to completely disintermediate all these IT jobs. And if you look at any metric you want to, from the number of people in IT in an enterprise to the amount of spend on IT, the amount of spend of people to revenue, whatever you want to put, it is 2-3x in today's world of spend, which has largely shifted to cloud, is the distribution mechanism versus on-site. We've seen that was consistent with the internet and all of the fear of what that would do to disintermediate people and jobs. And all it did was it unlocked the ability for humans to continue to accelerate innovation. And I think we'll continue to see this in a force multiplier kind of way as well. I think what it will do, though, is it will give us better outcomes and more accurate outcomes. And again, if we play it through, there will be humans doing, absolutely, and rightfully so, and thankfully so, less manual, thrash-driven functions, right? We should be we should be bringing velocity to that, right? And we let the humans then go do the things that are innovating on top of the models that are created. And so what happens is we allow more automation to happen with less humans. It creates velocity for the enterprise and how they engage with their customer supply chains, the efficiencies that it drives. What does that do? It translates into more velocity of circular revenue, which is going to drive, 1, 2, 3, 4 more points of GDP, which is going to let the economic cycles go and let us all become more prosperous. And that lets humans be able to engage in more value creation, more innovation. They're not going to do the mundane, human-driven toil that they may do today, but they'll do it in other more impactful ways.
Yeah, I just think about like my role as me and my team. We recruit for clients, we find talent for them. I just kind of imagine a world where when you come out of a conversation with a client, let's say over a phone call or a Zoom, the agents are at work knowing what the next step is. Based on the conversation, what follow-ups need to be taken into place, what information needs to go into the system, into the CRM, and scheduling the next calls with as far as interviews, et cetera, are concerned. That takes a good chunk of our day today. and just being able to automate that, I can only imagine it allows us to focus more on the things that truly matter in our role, which is building those relationships.
You can get to the buy side and the sell side at a higher level, and that's going to allow you to grow, to apply your workloads into things that generate revenue back to the company and grow faster as a company.
Yeah, I mean, so I have this thing of, for me personally, I tend to wake up really early in the morning so that I could go through my tasks for the day, right? And my tasks are certain things that I have to do, a follow-up here, a follow-up there, an email that needs to go out there. It's the process of the job, and you have it in engineering and sales and marketing. It's the small things that have to be done. I find that a lot of salespeople tend to not do those things because it's tedious, it's boring, but it's those little small things that end up. I mean, if we think about you and I meeting, it was through a few follow-ups over email and that 7 a.m. morning task of, hey, Rob, can we, is there an opportunity for us to record this? But having an agent to be able to do that for you, so you can really focus on the conversation, on the relationship, that's exciting. That's without a doubt exciting. But I'm also keen to get your thoughts on the world of software engineers, right? What does it even mean to be a software engineer? Let's say 2 years from now. Not right now. Right now they have Cursor and Augment Code, all these different products to help them, and these are great products. But 2 years from now, what is the role of a software engineer?
I think we're going to see a new class of engineer emerge, right? Because when we look at what AI in general and agents specifically do, is they focus on the outcome, right? And define and achieving highly accurate outcomes. And they deal with all of the automation and all those things that you just mentioned in your world. Calendar scheduling, email construction, follow-up, all the follow-up connect the dots, all the different things that are required to coordinate the either client or recruit part of the engagement, right? You can have agents that do that. Now, you're going to still need your standard class engineers to go build that, and they're going to have better tooling, all the things, whether it be a cognition AI or any of the different cursor tools that are out there, and going to continue to emerge, right, to do that work. But it's really going to be there's going to be a new class of engineer that defines outcomes, and how do we go build outcome-based layers that our engineers deliver agents to. So I think you're going to see almost an agentic layer engineer that's focused on outcome. And I think it'll be a bit of a mashup of skill set between a classically trained engineer, and the business process work or workflow work that you may see in a typical management consultant. Now, we'll be able to do that with more tooling, but there'll be a class of engineer that will be focused on workflow outcomes that are built through engineered services. And I think that will become the agentic engineer, and that we're seeing the need for that skill set to emerge.
We're talking about generalist here, like an engineer that has general skills with first principles thinking.
First principles thinking, probably somewhat focused in categorical areas. It might be for tax. It might be finance, sales, supply chain. So I think you will see it somewhat vertically oriented, but classically trained generalist with specific vertical connotation. Yes.
The role of a programmer, software engineer, the function of actually coding, do you think that's going to still exist in 2 years?
The answer to that I'll sort of back into. All of this AI and agentic greatness that we're all, enabling. It's software. It's still software. Now, how we get there is done differently. It's with different tools and that are going to continue to evolve and innovate, but it's still done through software. And so as long as we're still going to do it with software, there will be engineers that will be the ones that are enabling it. And they'll, there was a world that went from COBOL to C to Python and a lot in between all of that, of course. We're just going to see the next generation and class of this continue to evolve and emerge because all this is still going to be done at the core base with software.
I love it. Rob, let's go back to earlier on in your career. We kind of touched on it earlier in the conversation, Hortonworks and Cloudera, and you were part of the taking Hortonworks public. Did you then leave, go to Docker, and then join Cloudera? What was kind of paints us the picture here of the dynamics there of what happened?
So yeah, sure. So I was fortunate enough we started Hortonworks, took it public, and then in January of 2019, Hortonworks and Cloudera, both public companies, in the same space, both focused in the Hadoop world, merged.
Just really quickly, what was the market cap of each company before the merger? Do you remember?
Just under a couple $2 billion each. And the two companies merged. The Cloudera management team, senior management team largely ran it. There was some, the CPO, my co-founder, Arun, CPO, was on the product leadership as well. And I went to Docker as the CEO, and we had some restructuring work that needed to happen. I did that for about 9-10 months, and then I returned back to Cloudera as the CEO. Management team transitioned out. The CEO team transitioned out. I rejoined as the CEO. Was very fortunate. It was a great leadership team that was there, and we got very focused on continuing to transition the customer base from the on-prem legacy platforms that both Hortonworks and legacy Cloudera had to a hybrid private public cloud, new platform, new architecture. Moved that over, continued to grow the company, improve the operating margin pretty significantly, and just generally worked on the health and growth and expansion of the company and the team, and then sold the company to private equity in 21, and stayed another couple of years, just under a couple of years. And we learned a lot in that cycle. We saw where the enterprise was going and its aspirations for AI. We saw the evolution of LLMs and what they could bring to data generally for an enterprise. And we saw the potential of what agents could do in the role they play, and that's why we ultimately started Sema4 as a result of that.
A lot of our listeners and viewers are founders or soon-to-be founders, engineers, investors, and early adopters. And that story right there with Hortonworks and Cloudera, that's exciting. Building successful companies, merging them together, selling them again. You've gone through a startup that's gone public, you've merged a company, and you've sold them to private equity. You pretty much did the whole thing, right? So there's a lot of moments there of lessons. If we think about that part, that section of your life between Hortonworks and Cloudera and the merger and the sale to private equity, what would you say are the biggest lessons you can take from that period?
People are the most important things. Relationships that with the team that you're building, that having the right people and the right jobs who have the right skill set for the phase of the company in its in and that it has to go through. Getting that right is the difference between it working and not, or working at scale and or not. Being maniacally focused on customer outcome success and laying on the track, doing whatever you need to do to make it work and be successful, and creating sort of, culture, vibe, commitment to excellence, whatever you want to call it, that everybody inside the company is all about whatever it takes to get the customer's outcome at the highest, best level of success and satisfaction. And God forbid you have to lose money on a deal to do it. You do it. But you do it correctly. You achieve a commitment to the sense of excellence, and they see that and they get that, and that builds success on itself. There's a lot of things in between that. Having the right team, the right relationships in the team, the right skill sets, in the right jobs at the phase the company's in that can get it to the next phase, in customer success at any and all cost, and an esprit de corps behind the company to get there. Those are the barbells. There's a bunch of stuff in between that connects those and makes those two work. But if you get those two right, the rest sort of will find its way.
And you said, when I asked you the question, you responded so quickly with the people. And being in your position, you've seen a huge amount of success with multiple companies that you've built, and now you're doing it again. When you first started Hortonworks, were your feelings about people today, having gone through that journey, the cycles, the same today as they were? And I'm not saying you didn't care about people. I'm sure you always did. But it's more of like, when you're first starting out to build something, you're kind of figuring out what's going on, right? You've got the investors you need to bring in. You need to bring in the customers. You've got the design partners. But if you look at the company you're building today with all those lessons, and the company you built before, realizing the importance of people, firstly, did you have the same feelings when you first started with Hortonworks? And secondly, knowing this now, how do you think about building a company today?
Excellent question. So I had the fortune before Hortonworks to, worked at Oracle, seen the scale of, a double for 6-7 years in a row, in some of the best leadership in the world to watch them. So I had a frame of reference, but never as an operator. Had, operated a couple of other companies, JBoss, SpringSource, both were acquired, part of that process. And so you understand the value of people, understand the importance of having the right skills and the right roles. But Hortonworks was very different because it went very big, very fast, and it reached inflection points that you didn't have context for. And so you understand the importance of people, but you don't appreciate the criticality of the roles they need to play as you go from one stage to the next to the next. And in my case, I didn't have the benefit of going through that scale that fast, moving into a public offering, going through that, and just all the piece parts that come into that in just a very fierce competitive environment. And so I had the appreciation for the people and the importance of relationships, but not the skill that you needed to get through each of the cycles. Now, I think where I was so fortunate at Hortonworks was having a core set of board members that were invaluable at helping me and our team, helping me build the team, helping me see that what was coming next, how to prepare for it, and how to get me through the gear pattern, not without collateral, but with minimal. And then quite frankly, I just had a really high intellect set of co-founders that rose to the occasion, right? They just simply rose to the occasion, and I was very fortunate to be able to be part of that. And so looking back and seeing that, there were some really, really high impact, high value board members that took us through that cycle. Probably, 4, 5, 6 key ones. And then just tremendous team that we had. And then I look at that as lessons learned. And we look at this model, and this is almost circular. All of that is pattern recognition. And the skill sets that you need to start the product side of this. But we now look at AI and what is so different in how you build the tech, how you engage a customer versus that cycle of on-prem and cloud versus AI. And so you have to use pattern recognition, but you have to see through the smoke and the fog and the dark of where the art of the possible that AI is going to take us and reapply that pattern recognition to the new dynamic of how we're going to build tech, the outcomes it's going to generate, how it's going to get engaged and adopted by the customer. That is exponentially different than in our previous world. And so we apply the value to relationships and people, but you have to reimagine it in the new cycle of how we go from awareness to engagement to consumption to monetization. That's very different. That's a very different awareness, engagement, consumption cycle than it looked in the on-prem SaaS world versus AI world. And at the end of the day, the common denominator, though, is people.
I love it. I being a recruiter, I love it more because I appreciate the importance of people. As far as the adoption of AI in enterprise today, it's how different is it to SaaS in the past, or the cloud era or the internet era? What does it even mean to adopt AI within an enterprise today? And are there any significant differences to the past?
I think so. And again, we have a model, good, bad, or indifferent. It's the way we think about things. And again, it's a flywheel, and it goes from awareness to engagement to consumption to monetization. And whether you're leading sales or product or marketing or G&A, we pressure test everything against the work we're doing. How does that impact at what part in that cycle? And how do we make this work in as much of a low friction, no friction, digital velocity as we can? And this was true in the on-prem SaaS days. It's much more true in how we do it in a higher velocity way in AI, right? And so when we think about that and the role that the people play for it, SaaS is an outside in. AI is an inside out model. And they're very different in how you go through that awareness, engagement, consumption model. So the point being how you engage with a customer and make them aware of the capability, the problem you're solving, the value it creates for them, to how they would engage with the tech in a SaaS world versus an AI world, how they would consume the tech in a SaaS versus an AI world, and then how they begin to pay for it in a SaaS versus an AI world become very different. Outside in, inside out. And what I mean by that is, in the SaaS world, it's a land and expand. They're both land and expand models, right? In a SaaS world, the land's harder. The expansion's easier, right? In an AI world, the land is reasonably easy, but the expansion is a bit harder. In today's world and where the tech is, right? Now, if you look at OpenAI, that's not true in terms of land and expand, and you look at their revenue model. Seems probably true with Cursor and Cognition AI. But in general, at the application layer, I think those are those statements are very true. Outside in, inside out. The land was harder in SaaS, expand easier, faster, bigger. AI, land is easier, but we've not proven the ability to expand on an exponential basis at the app layer yet. That's coming. I think you will see it in the next 12, 18, 24 months go exponential for expansion, but that's the cycle that we're in today.
That was an incredible description between the two. And it's interesting because if I think about conversations I've had with investors, angel investors, and founders, is that some, more than some, have yet to see the real return on investment on AI. I guess what you're saying is that we're going to see this J curve because of the complexity of the technology, because of the possibility of how big, as we said earlier on, the impact on global GDP. Do you see a world where that J curve is going to happen with AI, as you said, in the next 12, 18 months? And when it does, it's going to be pretty insane.
I think it's going to be substantial next 12, 18, 24 months. And again, it comes back to where are we in the market adoption cycle, right? And we're moving from generative AI to application intelligence. Okay, and
so you said generative
you
AI.
caught it.
Yeah, go on.
From generative AI, and that's the ChatGPT and how we take
Correct.
and automate documents or the announcement to application intelligence. Right. And you picked up on that. And what application intelligence is, it's outcome driven. And how do we define our best in class outcome, the best in class KPIs, and how do we define the work in which we do in order to get to that? We know what that is. We train humans all day, every day, in how to do work. We give them access to data through data warehouses, through all kind of tooling and dashboards that they look at to make inference decisions that they apply human rationale into a series of steps that we probably take them through sequentially as part of a SaaS app, right? And we can define that outcome that we want them to get to very simply in a run book that then builds an agent that drives that, and it understands the data sources that it takes to properly reason that outcome. And it understands in the whole world, I'm dating myself, COBOL, the if-then. If this customer contract changes or these order types change or sequence evolves, then this is the resolution, and we train it. That's what agents will do, right, in this new world. And so we'll start to see those things happen. We're just at the beginning point of the early adopters who have picked use cases and said, this is a way to create value and where I can start with automation. And they've tried different agentic models and approaches to AI to solve for those use cases. And the earlier they were in the adoption cycle, early adopter cycle, the more they figured it out, the more they've gotten it into production and the value creation. We're seeing that play through. And that's the example I gave a little while ago where they say, oh, we now get the art of the possible for what agents can do. Here's sort of the common themes of, problems that are very use cases, very applicable for agents in finance and tax and compliance or supply chain or MRO, whatever it may be. And if we can do that there, I've got these 12 other areas that we can now go specifically do consistently this way, and now they're in that model. We're also seeing the early majority grouping who have learned the lessons of their colleagues who have done it, and they want to repeat that and leverage that for their environment, and they're iterating through that quickly. And so once they're into that cycle over the next 6-12 months, you'll see the next big wave of leveraged adoption that comes in. So it's different layers in the stack who have hit critical mass for AI. I think where the massive unlock of transformation of operating and business models happens across the enterprise will come through agents. We're in that space. We're competing fiercely there. But there's going to be a lot of very big winners at the application layer, and that part of the model is just playing through now.
That's exciting. I think it kind of leads me to a question around, you mentioned early adopters, right? When you think about the early adopters for your company today versus the ones in the past with your prior companies, is there more of a sense of FOMO today with early adopters than there was in the past? I mean, are early adopters now thinking, I need access to this technology today more than ever?
Pressure points are bigger, wider, and more intense today. And because there's not a single board worth their salt anyway that's not pressing on management to come for senior management to come back to them with the answer to how are we going to get value from AI? Not just how we get value, but we have reached a level of efficiency where we're not seeing any step changes. We're only seeing marginal efficiency changes in the way that we do things and the way we expand or improve our operating margin or our supply chain turns or our product innovation cycles, whatever it may be. And so we're sort of, we never hit peak efficiency, but our step function change improvement across the board is diminishing. And so how do we apply AI to get step function changes into our operating unit economics and ultimately transform our overall operating and business model velocity, right? And they're looking for senior management, the CXOs, to come back with, here's our AI strategy, and so that obviously rolls through the organization, and we're in this state of let's pick a use case to start with, and they may start at one end or the other of types of agents or a way to apply AI, and they have to go through a learning curve. Some work, some don't. It's iterative, and they are now in the stages of, okay, here's our AI strategy, and now here's how we apply the tech stack into our existing infrastructure to enable our AI strategy to play through. And that's a couple of year cycle for us. Right. And there's some parables in the past. If you want to go down that path, I can explain. I can draw the parallel to that in the ERP world, right? And the efficiencies that came out of it, and the massive spin that came from that, and the massive growth, and quite frankly, the value that got created across the enterprise is as a result of it. And that then led to all new form factors called SaaS and the big companies that got created. And we know the story, of course. All that is beginning again with AI, but it is going to be extraordinarily bigger than anything we've ever seen. It's going to create exponentially more value in the enterprise. And as I've alluded to in my belief and my economics say, it's going to add substantially from a global economic standpoint, and it will result in much increased GDP, actually.
So it sounds like the characteristics are the same. It's just bigger, way bigger.
Exponentially bigger.
You have a particular view about the GDP piece, which I really want to touch on. But as far as just touching on, again, going back to the adoption of AI, agentic AI, any type of AI into enterprise customers, is it easier to adopt and integrate these products than it was in the past?
It will be easier, and it will become increasingly easier than it was with previous technology generations, in particular SaaS. Today, where if we were to turn that question somewhat outside in, if you will, or inside out, it's what are the barriers to this,
Right.
right? And so, great, if it's going to become as easy at worst, or certainly easier for AI to be applied in the tech stack and or make the tech stacks easier, what are the barriers? And in today's world, it is, okay, how do we think about the security, the governance, the lineage that comes with applied AI in whatever form factor, generative or agent or application intelligence? Because how it interacts with data and how it changes in its execution cycle of an agent or a generative process, the permissions to data and user profile can substantially change. And so what's the governance associated with that? What are the security implications behind that? Just what is the auditability of the lineage of the data access and the reasoning model construct and the agent executions paths have to look like? And those are the things that are the barriers to adoption right now as they're getting sorted out. The tooling is there. The capability is there. I think the right answers are in place. But you have the proper enterprise have to pressure test this appropriately, because the kind of transformation and enablement this brings is monumentally impactful and creates monumental force multiplier value unlock. But that comes with exposure, and that has to be rationalized all the way through. And that's what we're going through as the enterprises look at how they really adopt this at scale.
I think adoption is such an important talking topic for us, because you mentioned security. And when I talk to founders that are building these AI products, the biggest challenge they have with getting their product to the customer and adopting it is the risks around security, and customers fear that their data is being used. How do you overcome that? But before answering that question, firstly, when we think about data, right, because you can't have AI without data, there's a lot of claims of companies that they're able to provide the level of service and adopt their product into an enterprise without touching the data of the customer. Firstly, is that true?
Well, I can't speak for any and everybody's claim whether it's true or not. That's up for them. Data is required to drive accuracy, right? Without what data brings is context, right? And the more context you provide, the more accuracy you generate through AI, generally an agent specifically, right? And LLMs have a great role in the plan that they can execute, but there's still, as we all know, an air pocket between a plan and a fully accurate, continuously trained reasoning model that requires more than just LLM data, right? And you're not going to put that data into an LLM, right? So the question becomes, how accurate in the world where accuracy matters, in the world where context is important to getting to accuracy. How do you do that without data? Now, if you can do that without data, that's really, really AI in its finest for sure.
I mean, that sounds like super AI.
And maybe perhaps we'll get there. In today's world, for if the application and workflow automation, you have to have context in addition to LLM to get truly iterative reasoning models and highly, highly accurate outcomes. That's our experience anyway.
Rob, just one last thing around adoption. The security, right? When customers are thinking about adopting AI or buying a product, how should startups today think about protecting their customer as far as the risks associated with their data? The security piece, that's because for me personally, that's the biggest topic that keeps coming up.
It is the paramount topic that we all must do, because we cannot let, and I would say in the same breath as security, it's also governance, right? Because one pushes to the other. Because while we can lock down and put all the appropriate constraints for securing the data, it then becomes a permissions and accessibility to the data. And what happens is when AI goes through iterative stages of data access, and it has multiple roles within those stages. And so as an agent goes through a reasoning model and an execution path, it may change context of which group is engaging with the outcomes from that agent, and they may or may not have had permissions. And so security and governance become more tightly coupled than ever before across the enterprise when you talk about AI generally and agents specifically. And then what you have to layer into that then is the ability to understand the lineage. What data did it access? Which groups, and did they have permissions to access those form factors of data in the context of which it engaged it? And now with the new attribution of the outcome from the multiple data sets, does that change the permission rights for the people to see the outcome associated with it? And so understanding the lineage underneath the governance and the security construct, it all has to work together. And that's what you have to really make sure that you've done. And the way that I think you have to think about this is you have to operate not with a new set of permissions, but you have to do it within the framework of their existing permissions, right? And that has a whole different connotation for how your AI applications access data and permission rights and how it deploys inside their VPC or the particular marketplaces. And then, the implication of that is what's the form factor in which you build and containerize and deploy for the different deployment architectures that the tech's going to be consumed in. So you've now got this like 4 or 5 dimensional engineering model that you have to contemplate beyond just what the AI application is doing. And this gets back to your question a few minutes ago, which is we've got all this AI that's automating. Will there be need for software engineers? And as we get into, 4 or 5 degrees of reasoning models, we're going to need all kind of form function engineering to go build these things. more and more to address the simplicity that masks the complexity that comes with it. So
We currently call it artificial intelligence. How far are we from a world where it's super intelligence?
I wish I were smart enough to know the answer to that, and I do not know. But what I will tell you is, if you just look at how quickly we have advanced, I say we're the beneficiary of what some of these great models have done to open the aperture up for what we're doing. The step function rate of acceleration is like anything we've ever seen, and so we will get from AI to superintelligence, whatever that bar is determined, in a step function faster way than we've gotten from the old legacy worlds that we've operated in to AI. It'll be a fraction of the time.
Last topic I want to cover, and it's going back to one that we discussed earlier, which is GDP. It's a very interesting one because if you look back in history and how every new technological evolution has played its part in society, in business, in finance, in global economics, the GDP has just expanded and the population of people have expanded, have increased. What in your opinion, you've been in this space a long time, you've built companies, you've scaled companies, you're seeing so much promise with this technology. When we think about GDP globally and individually in terms of countries, what sort of world do we, what kind of world are we going to have as far as the easier access to wealth for individuals, the ability for one person to create a huge amount of wealth for themselves? Are we entering a world where the access to wealth is going to be easier than it has been in the past?
Again, I wish I were smart enough to know that. I think the barrier to entry of the ability to access the models that the operating and business models that generate revenue and value is lower. Right? And so with that, I now have a wider aperture of things that I can do, albeit it shifts from manual to automated kinds of operating businesses. But I think what we will see is billion-dollar companies that are created in 5 years with 50 to 100 employees, maybe less, right? And so it's understanding, like any industry that has ever been in the history of mankind that have created wealth for individuals. It's mastering a tech or a process or a sector in a domain. But I think the opportunity to master the tech that will enable you to go build an operating entity that can become 100, 200, 500, $1 billion company with a much smaller capital investment in terms of capitalization for people and or fixed asset, that bar's lowered substantially, right? And so by definition, that gives you the ability to create velocity to revenue at a much better operating margin that will be highly valued in public and private markets. And so that opens up the aperture for wealth creation and it lowers margin. Now, it's like everything. You have to master a category of tech or process or whatever it may be and master how to apply AI into it. But that's been the test of time for wealth creation forever, right?
The reason I asked that question is because, as we said, the size of companies has decreased as far as getting to that $1 billion, you can do it with a much smaller team. I also think the cost of running a business, if we think about attorney fees, legal fees, contracts being reviewed. I mean, the amount of times now that I use a ChatGPT or a Grok to review a piece of document, rather than in the past I would email it over to a legal counsel to look at it, and I may not get a response for a week. The customer's still waiting for the terms, and by the time we get it executed, it's 2 weeks gone. It's a legal bill. All that now is a matter of minutes. So I just think that as far as that access to wealth, because of the growth in GDP and the need for less people to build bigger companies in terms of valuation and revenue, and a lower cost of running those businesses, the equity component for the founders of those companies and the engineers who have equity in the business, as well as the investors, the pie is bigger, but less people sharing it.
But ultimately, it's the same allocation of equity for the investor class versus the employee class.
Sure.
Right? It's fewer employees that share in that, but the percentage, but the employees that are no longer sharing it, the percentage that in aggregate they shared was somewhat de minimis.
I want to share one. I know we said that was the last topic, but it kind of just brought something to mind. Something that we have discovered at our firm, Harris & Clark, over the past couple of weeks is, I won't mention any particular companies, but as you know, there have been one or two players in the market who recently got acquired. Founders left the team behind, and a lot of unhappy engineers who unfortunately weren't able to capitalize on the equity. We've been talking to a lot of these engineers, and there is a certain distrust in the market now, which is it's upsetting, because some of these folks who love startups, love being part of a startup, are now turning to big tech, which it's great, but it's not a startup. And the fundamental reason is the rumors in Silicon Valley, hearing that there have been in recent times one or two companies that have sold their businesses to a big tech or to had some sort of acquisition event, but left the team behind. It's a topic, and one that has been circling around a lot lately. What are your thoughts about how? I mean, if this keeps happening, what sort of real impact is this going to have on innovation? If the greatest talent aren't going to have the faith in joining a startup because of distrust in the market, I mean, we're going to enter quite I mean, you said it yourself, people are the most important part of a business.
Every situation, all the caveats, right? Every situation's different. There's always an underpinning that the broader world doesn't know about, of why or how a certain deal happened a certain way, and which stockholder classes did or didn't participate for whatever reason. Anyway, so that's the obvious caveat. I think the good news is, I'll acknowledge there's some of this happening. And the ones I'm aware of, there's different rhymes or reasons for why and how they happen the way they did. But in large, overall, it's the exception versus the rule, by and large. And I think we all know how this world works in general, whether it's East Coast, West Coast, Mid-America, we're building tech. It's about people, and it's about the quality value of the people generally, and it starts with product and the people who build it. And without that, and without their trust, innovation doesn't happen, right? And we also have, whether it be options or RSUs, equity incentives that go to that team to keep them focused and highly motivated. And it's a competition for the best and brightest. And you hate when something like that happens. And again, you don't know why boards and or leadership or founders make decisions and people get left behind. I don't want to speculate on that. But the point is, it's a finite resource of talent. And you
It's not
want to be
much.
able.
There's not much out there.
There's not much.
Yeah.
And so companies like us then want to go compete fiercely for that talent. And we want to bring them to a place where they're highly motivated, they're highly incented, and they're challenged to go bring their A game to the innovation to create the art of the possible that we're trying to do and be as a company in a tech stack. And so I think that dynamic is the other side of the trade to this. And it's a market normalization function. And I think those things that are the exceptions will, and I think on the flip side of that is you don't want to be that acquirer
No.
who was the one who left behind that highly functioning talent set. And you do not want to have that baggage hanging out there. And so I think while we go through this cycle that we've gone through, I acknowledge it, I think it'll normalize itself because where there's a risk for that profile to happen, that talent will find itself to other companies like ours and others that want to incent them, motivate them. But I think also the acquirers don't want to become that company that's viewed as the place not to get acquired by. And that will normalize itself as well.
Yeah, I mean, whilst these deals are absolutely, there's nothing, they are legitimate and completely legal. There's nothing wrong with them. It's just there is it lacks an element of I guess, moral compass. I think it's very different for someone like yourself because you've built a reputation for yourself by building successful companies, seeing them through major exits, and I'm sure you've created a lot of wealth for a lot of your employees, and that faith in yourself and your team and your co-founders puts you in a better position. But naturally, there are going to be some founders who don't have that track record, who unfortunately are challenged, and the reason I bring it up is if we have a number of companies in our portfolio that we're helping build, and they're incredible products, incredible founders, amazing VCs behind them. But these questions are now popping up that they weren't before. Is these engineers are a little bit worried about leaving this company to go to another company and risking that. So it creates new sets of challenges, and I'm sure you're aware of. In recent times, big tech has put out huge offers. I mean, we're talking sports level offers,
and then some.
And then some. And there's just a lot of taking that incredible talent off the market before they go out there and innovate and build something new. I said this to a founder the other day. We had a candidate interview. And this is quite new. This is a new thing we're seeing in the market, at least in the last 6 months, where the candidate we're representing isn't just the candidate that we're sending to a company. They're also exploring having us send them to one of our VC partners to potentially get term sheets. So that same candidate profile that's interviewing for an engineering role is also exploring the idea of, I have an idea as well. Unless this potential company that I'm going to join could potentially be a game changer. There's this avenue as well. So there's these new trends, new things that are coming out into the marketplace. It just creates more challenges, but also great excitement for innovation.
And that's exactly right. It's a balance that you have to wrestle with. But what it's doing is it's pushing on the edge of innovation and the acceleration of innovation as we get those opportunities out there.
Look, we're in Silicon Valley, right? We're in San Francisco right now recording, but also when I think about the technology that has been built here, there was a period where people started moving out during the pandemic. But now we're seeing that cycle back. Everyone's coming back here. This is where it's happening. What makes this place so special?
Well, I mean, it's the old adage, success breeds success, right? And so innovation breeds innovation. The critical mass of it's here, and there's a lot of reasons for that: the talent, the skill set, the education,
The weather.
the weather, but quite frankly, the VC ecosystem, right? It's where the center of the universe of money concentration is for Series A, B, C companies, largely is. And that brings the skill sets that do it. This is where ground zero for the critical mass of that talent is, and it's not going away, and it only comes back to reform. We're way beyond the pandemic. People want, need, and quite frankly, have to be back in the office together full time. And this is the right model to do it in the right place. Now, I think there is a place outside of this for the same models to work. It requires concentration of capital to be able to make those markets work. You've seen New York do it. You've seen Austin do it, Boston to a lesser degree. One day I'd like to see my hometown of Atlanta do it correctly. Maybe I'll be part of that at some point. But at the end of the day, this is where the concentration of money, the domain that comes with it, the supply chain from the universities, and just the core skill sets of people. Success breeds success, and and this is world-class place to do it from.
It goes back to the people. I mean, this. You're absolutely right. There's a concentration of the right talent here. Rob, it has really been a pleasure having you on, and I really enjoyed this. We probably should definitely do this again because there's so much more for us to discuss. I want to wrap up with a book recommendation. We are this podcast is called Inside the Silicon Mind because when we thought about launching this, the idea behind it is let's get into the mind of Silicon Valley leaders. And Silicon Valley is here, but it's also everywhere, right? You could be building a company in London, in New York, in Atlanta, as you said, but it's that mindset of building a company, but what it takes to build a company. Now, you've seen many cycles. You've seen acquisitions. You've seen going public. You've seen mergers. You've then rebuilt everything, put it together, and sold it to private equity, and now you're building again. And with that comes many lessons, too many to count. As far as a book is concerned, has there been a book for you, one that has been a staple, a hallmark in your repository, one that you've read in the past or are reading now and truly resonates when you think about what it takes to be a successful founder and build a successful company?
So, yeah, I mean, I'm not as well read as many, or probably should be. On the surface level, there's one recently read and got recommended by a good friend of mine, Scott Davidson, called The Rational Optimist by Matt Ridley. And it just talks about, human innovation and its quest for human innovation and, what it does to create ultimately the construct to wealth and what that path is. And so it's been a great book. It's a great read. And I think you'll enjoy it. I will tell you though, you're right. I've had many cycles, and and that comes with a lot of elations of highs and a lot of lows of lows, and you go through a lot of trials and tribulations when you've done this as long as I've done this, and a lot of road miles. And I will tell you the one that you've said a trigger word. What's been the staple of a book maybe that's got you? And I will tell you, and I think it's applicable, and I'm proud to say, especially in light of what just happened with Charlie and his assassination. But the staple that's always gotten me through whenever I couldn't find the answer has been the Bible. And I would always go to the Bible, and that would get me to the other side of what the answer I needed to get, or the way I needed to do it better, right, different. That was the guidepost. That was my standard, and it's always worked, and think it always will.
It's amazing that you said that because I feel like that divine connection is something that doesn't get spoken about a lot, especially in the business world. When I think about your journey as an entrepreneur, you said something earlier on. You said you had a set of board members and they were quite special.
Yeah.
You said 5 or 6 board members. And I just think now you are that board member because of all the experience that you've had. You know, if you sat on a board of
I'm the old guy. Yeah, I am.
The experience, the
yeah.
wisdom, right? Because
Yeah.
you're sitting here today thinking about that time when you built your one of your companies, and one thing you thought about was the people in the team that you built, the culture. But fundamentally, you and your co-founders had those experienced folks who've been through the cycles. And many people don't talk about failures. They talk about their success, or at least externally, that's what you see. You see this well-polished individual who's had multiple successes. And, you know, with this episode, our introduction will have your background and the successes you've had. But I'm sure there's many, many moments throughout your career that have been the hardest, right? Where your back is against the wall, and whether you're facing a macro level financial distress like a recession, or difficulty in landing a customer and the long period of time that you have to wait to land an enterprise customer, or a funding round. I'm sure you've got many of those.
Yeah, we've got a
stories.
lot of war stories. Yeah, and quite frankly, you know, bad decisions, regretful decisions. Yeah. So it comes at both extremes.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's about people, relationships, relying on your faith, and constantly learning and trying to get to do it better and more exemplary, and learn to be better every day.
Yeah, I think that integrity piece is important.
Yeah.
Right? Because if you have an intelligent person who's super efficient and fast but lacks integrity, that's a dangerous character. I think integrity is so important in today's business, especially when we are effectively playing with a piece of technology that, and I'm sure you are aware of this, as exciting, as profound as this technology is, there is, without a doubt, and I don't think anybody can deny, and I've had many people on this show who, when pressed, they will admit that this technology is ultimately can be quite dangerous.
It you know, you're not gonna, you know, self-driving cars, risk and exposure, AI left unchecked or in the hands of bad actors, risk and exposure, right? And so, you know, that becomes where we have to have the right governance in place. I'm not talking about governance at that level, but we have to have governance as an industry, right? And how we approach and do this, and that becomes our responsibility as founders generally. And you know, you'll see, I think, the movement toward that emerge faster and bigger with people much more important than me that'll drive that.
The last thing I'll probably say from my side is the evidence is in the fact that you're now seeing tech executives, leaders of the technology world, now having meetings at the White House.
Yeah.
That says a lot about the impact of Silicon Valley on
and them embracing it.
That's right. Yeah. Rob, it's been a pleasure.
Yeah,
Thank you so
I've enjoyed
much.
it.
I really have. I've really enjoyed everything we've discussed. And I definitely want to come back again. I think we need to have a part 2 that we talk about the failures, because that in itself is...
We can have a long session on that. Yeah. And congratulations on all your success, and the studio here is awesome.
Appreciate it. Rob, thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
This podcast was brought to you by Superintelligence Labs and powered by Harrison Clark. At Harrison Clark, we're at the heart of Silicon Valley's evolution and at the intersection of search and venture, funding the companies shaping the future and connecting them to the most elite cloud, data, and AI talent. To learn more, visit harrisonclark.com. If today's episode challenged your thinking, then share it with someone who's driving innovation. For even more insights on achieving product market fit, subscribe to our newsletter, the PMF Playbook, where we break down the journey from zero to product market fit. Visit thepmfplaybook.com. For more episodes, follow us on social media or visit insidethesiliconmind.com. Until next time, stay curious, stay consistent, and stay inside the Silicon Mind. See you soon.